Good evening. I'm Claremont Featherstone inviting you to Security Focus. This evening, we will deal with a couple of issues that has been engaging my attention over the last couple of months. One has to do with the degree of builder's waste we find around the city. You walk on the seawalls, Durban Street, Hatfield Street, Regent Street, Lalouni Street, Lemaha Street, tires, wood, 4-inch nails, zinc, broken bottles, and the like. And these items can be found throughout the length and breadth of Georgetown, even in central Georgetown. Many just to the side of the roadway, sidewalk, sometimes on the pave, and you name the place, you can see builder's waste, bricks, bottles, some which could be used as weapons and the like. And I think we ought to have some system in place by which the municipality can engage the citizenry if need be and have us filter our city or filter the ward in which we live, but particularly the city, the garden city, the only city we can boast about at this point in time. So that was just a thought. There is another matter that has been going on for quite some time, perhaps a decade. That has to do with scores of youngsters, 13, 14, perhaps up to 21, 22. Many of them could be seen at nights on these small cycles, and they are traversing the city. Sometimes they come from as far as the East Coast, some from as far as the East Bank, and they ride through the city, oftentimes without any lighting at all, in large groups, 10, 15 of them, and at times touching people, taking hats off of people's head, and at times hitting vehicles and the like, or even dashing through vehicles, much to their own detriment. So I believe the police should pay some sort of attention to this new development. I've seen persons being struck. I've seen persons having their spectacles taken off. I've seen persons being hit with objects by these groups of youngsters, especially in the vicinity of the Georgetown seawall. Sometimes on Water Street, they can be traversing and riding the streets as late as 10:30 at nights. And I often wonder what has happened with parenting, what has happened with responsible charge at home, and so forth. So we need to look out for them. I would like the police to keep an eye out, particularly the beat duty police officers in the vicinity of the Georgetown seawall, to pay keen attention to the large scores of youngsters. There are even some groups of Indian youngsters, and you can see 10, 12, 14 of them breaking down the gay prostitute in the vicinity of King Street and those areas. We need to look out for them, and we need to try to have some system in place that we could keep our teenagers in line, particularly as it relates to traversing the street and getting themselves into difficulties at night. I have a little checklist. Sometime during this week, Mr. Royston King, the town clerk, made some utterances with respect to the security or new security arrangement at the border market. And what he was saying in practicality was that a private entity, whether it was the owner of a business in the market or anyone else, could not just go into the border market, or any market for that matter, and proceed to offer security services. And he made the point forcefully that only the council has the authority to enforce the bylaws in those very areas. Last week, I made that very point in relation to a private security service that was using the PAVE to position its officers for purposes of providing protection to businesses on Regent Street. And it was the very point I was making, that being the private security company concern cannot, without some official attestation from the council, proceed to offer security services in the city once their officers are using streets controlled by the city without the city's sanction. So Mr. King's utterances with respect to the border market and the security in other markets serve to bear me out there, because I know persons might very well feel that, I'm attacking someone or what the case may be, but this has nothing to do with that. I am dealing primarily with the issue of responsibility and blame should something go wrong. Sometime this week, I had a meeting with foreign security professional. And very early in that meeting, he said to me, I am not impressed with the level of protection offered in Guyana. I am not impressed with the kind of security offered in Guyana. I am not impressed with the manner in which private security companies conduct their operations in Guyana. And then he qualified that by saying, so what I'm saying is, if I had the opportunity to advise foreign companies, whether it is an oil company, an international consortium, what have you, I would not advise them to go or to contract the majority of local companies currently in the security industry. And he said, I think the best thing to do is to bring in a security company from overseas and start from scratch to socialize security personnel and try to raise a new security culture in the country that would be fitting for offering security services to the various entities come 2020, 2021, and beyond. I have my own view of the state of our local security industry. I've made those views known time and time again during my writings in the letter column. I believe the Guyanese security guard or security officer can function to international standard, given the training, given the supervision, and given the right environment. Because many of them have gone out on peacekeeping force, have gone to work in foreign jurisdictions, and I've seen them work incredibly overseas in many countries. And so I do not go with the view that nothing good, so to speak, can come out of the local security industry in its currently constituted form. However, I do believe that our security industry is kind of a hustler industry, like so many of our businesses. And many of the companies have been in existence for, say, 25, 30, 40 years. And as such, it is somewhat difficult for them to snap themselves out of this sort of hustler behavior, this sort of hustler conduct. I'll give an example Several years ago, the head of the EC delegation, while at a function at the US ambassador's residence, shared some information with me. And he said, one of the reasons why we would never be able to offer proper security services in Guyana has to do with the cutthroat mentality of the security industry. And he gave this example. He said, take, for example, the money the EC pays in, say, Barbados or Trinidad or even Suriname. What the EC pays to protect their delegation in those countries, they pay less than half to protect those interests in Guyana because of the cutthroat nature of the security industry. Everybody wants to go $100, $1,000 lower than the other, and in the end, usually compromises the security on offer. That, as a case study, that alone should serve to tell us what we have been doing in the industry and some of the things we need to do to ensure that the security industry is taken back to a professional course. And I say taken back because what obtains today in the security industry was not always the norm. Back in the Forbes-Burnham era, we were a very security conscious people, and our security force could have functioned on par with the security in the UK and several other Commonwealth countries. And as I said in one of my articles, we were able to do things in a professional way, and the manner in which several head of states, the Israeli, Indian, Palm in Sweden, were assassinated, it would have been highly unlikely for persons to succeed in assassinating or carrying out a successful assassination on a head of state in Guyana during the Forbes-Burnham era, say anyway up to 1985-86. When we come back, I will deal with a few other troubling matters. Stay tuned. Security Focus is brought to you by Regium International, Northwest Investment Inc., Intelligard Specialist Security Services, and the Institute of Security and Public Safety. Welcome back. I would like to report on a troubling event which took place in our city a few weeks ago, perhaps 6 weeks ago. And it has to do with the state of safety in our country, the safety of workers in an industrial setting. A childhood friend of mine was employed until recently, so to speak, with one of our well-known entities, business houses, as it were. And she had an accident, one which a gate, huge iron gate, she was attempting to open it to go into the compound to allow her boss to drive in, and the gate came out of the track, 600-700 pound gate, 500 pound, don't know, came out of the track and fell on her. Broke her up. Number of open fractures, most of the injuries, all of the injuries for that matter, on her right side. The employers took her to the public hospital, and she received medical attention over a period of time. There was some minor altercations between the relatives and the owners of the company, perhaps because of the manner in which they handled things initially, and some family members did feel that the company could have done better. Of import is the fact that she reported sometime after that the owner of the company said to her while he was taking her or accompanying her into the hospital that she was responsible for the accident. However, she did. Many persons opined later on that apparently she loosed out the gate and threw it on herself. But he said that to her to put a number of things in train. And so ever since, whether it had to do with the relevant governmental agencies that would look into the matter, each time one of those agencies were contacted, each time one of those agencies made an utterance on the matter, it was always of the kind when a person is distrustful of an event. Recently, while seeking a second opinion from another consultant, medical consultant, who ordered a series of x-rays, she discovered, much to her horror, that on the night that she went into the theater, a series of corrective surgeries were done, corrective measures were put in place. However, none of her family members, whether father, mother, brother, sister, nobody present at the hospital at the time, and even her good self, knew or consented to the steel plates and pins and screws and bolts and the like that turned up in her. So after experiencing all sorts of complications, pain when it is about to rain, pains at night, pains in the ankle, and all sorts of things, she sought this second opinion. She was told when she went to the theater the night that they could not put the steel or whatever it is that they're going to use to stabilize the bone in at that set time because she lost flesh. She had had chunks of flesh gorged out by this huge iron gate and so forth and so forth and so forth. And she was told that those injuries have to heal, and at some juncture, when she went back to clinic, the specialist would decide when was the appropriate time for the steel to be put into her. So she went back to the hospital and she would ask the doctor when this thing would happen. There would always be somebody from the company accompanying her, and there were times when some small amounts of money was paid when blood tests and so had to be done. And the company always ensured that they collected those documents and secured them. The owner of the company later remarked that the reason for so doing had to do with the fact that the relatives of the injured woman had signaled by way of behavior that they intend to sue the company, and that was his way of staving off litigation. Something else happened. When the owner of the company went to the Georgetown hospital to see this badly broken up female, he went with a former major general of the Guyana Defense Force, who was a business colleague of his. The woman did not know what to make of the presence of the general, even though she knew him, but somehow she felt intimidated. And a series of events ensued. Recently, I found out that the NIS made it clear that the documents sent to that institution by the company did not reflect or indicated that a serious industrial accident had occurred on their premises in the first place. Similar sentiments have since been expressed by senior persons at the Labor Department. I've heard professionals in the safety arena said oftentimes that we in Guyana have to become more safety conscious. But I can go a little further. After this woman was crushed by this gate, this huge iron gate, and taken to the Georgetown Hospital, because of the sheer weight of this gate, passers-by, persons going to meetings and the like, including diplomats, persons attached with foreign embassies and the United Nations, stopped to assist to lift this gate off of this woman. So shortly after, a week or so, these people, week, 2 weeks, these persons came back to find out from the company, well, you know, there was this tragic accident here a week or two ago, and we wanted to know how this lady is doing, and could you tell us which hospital she's in, and the like, and so forth and so forth. And even that was shrouded in secrecy. And the persons connected with the company said to those persons that we cannot share any information with you. We cannot say to you where she lives. We cannot tell you which hospital she's in. We cannot say anything of any sort with respect to that matter. And so those persons did their own investigation and found out where the woman lived and got information. But even the Georgetown Public Hospital had something to say at some particular point in time about how the company was handling its affairs. Now, I have a personal interest in this case, and here is why. This company is owned by a gentleman who most of the former staff of the Guyana Review magazine, which was published by President David Granger back in the day, would say was one of their best or most constant supporters. He was always there for the company. He always supported the company. You could go to him every month, every other month, and he would put an ad and he would do something to stimulate the growth and ensure that the magazine remains buoyant. And so I have fond memories of that gentleman and his company having served as a lead story reporter to that magazine for almost a decade. When this matter came to my attention, I immediately hoped for the benefit of the president or current president, for the benefit of the current president and that gentleman's acquaintance, relationship, friendship, whatever it is, because they both served in the army. That's another thing. And I would like to know that that company does the proper thing, honor its obligation to that lady who perhaps is going to have some 25% disability or more. I would like to know that the company honors its obligation to that woman, ensure that she is properly taken care of. Recently, I'm told that the lady asked someone in the company for a copy of her pay slip to find out how her NIS is being paid and so forth. And that staffer said, we could not give you a copy of your pay slip. And she says, well, why? And the staff says, because you're no longer on the payroll. So she has been receiving salaries for 2 months since the accident, but she finds out recently that she is no longer on the payroll. So she asks this question: if I am no longer on the payroll, by what means are you paying me? And the staff says, well, the payment you're receiving per month constitute part of our payout to you, part of our settlement to you, as it were. And she was not very happy for this development, probably spoke with her attorney and so forth. But I just wanted to bring that as brief as possible to the public so that you could know two things: the state of safety in our country and the way females in particular, because many of the people in even our industrial setting, whether they're secretaries, cleaners, housekeepers, many of the employees in our industrial setting are females. And I want you to know how our female workers, how our workers are being treated by some of the entities in our country. That lady was employed with that company, I'm told, for some 15 years. In a subsequent program, I will report to the public the state of that matter. I will also shed some light on a few other security-related matters of import. I am Clement Featherstone, wishing you an enjoyable rest of the day.